Hello, this is Harry Paden. I'm the host of the Paden Perspective, and this is episode 6 of the Paden Perspective. And today we will cover subjects surrounding women. This is March. March has been designated Women's History Month, and also today is March the 8th, and the March the 8th has been designated International Women's Day. And I'd like to definitely give appreciation to women. One of my biggest influence, as I've always said, and if you haven't heard it, then you haven't been around me. My biggest influence was my mother, who has gone on to the great beyond, but she was my biggest influence. She first taught me the importance of education. She taught me character values, so many character values that it made such a difference in my life. And by her teaching it to me, I now teach it to, I did teach it to my children who are all grown, and they teach it to their grandchildren, and I see it in them. Things like being respectful, being honest, having character, make yourself available. If you say you're going to be somewhere at 9 o'clock, be there at 9 o'clock. I don't go in for that colored people time. Well, I'm not colored, I'm black. So with me, time is important. And again, that character value came to me from my mother. And, of course, my father had great influence, but because this is Women's History Month, and because it is International Women's Day, I just wanted to highlight the biggest influence in my life, the biggest, bar none, was my mother. And my mother died when I was 16, so, you can see in just 16 years, she taught me how to cook, clean, sew, do dishes, so much stuff that I used in my life. I became a single parent, and all those skills I was able to use in my life. So thank you, Mommy. Love you. Always. But today, we're going to talk about women, and I'm going to have to step down because I don't want to fall. That would be too funny. I'm going to get the laptop for this. The reason being is that I got a little problem with my internet, so I couldn't print it. But let me give you some information about International Women's Day. International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity, making women equal to men. Significant activity is witnessed worldwide. It's just not a local celebration, it's a worldwide celebration, as groups come together to celebrate women's achievements or rally for women's equality. And it's one of the most important days of the year. We really got to take our time and, give women our due. I'm a black person, as I've noted, and it's hard not to notice that. But as a race, we still deal with our own inequities in this country and across the world. But some of the things, the activities being done on this day, celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness about women's equity, equality, lobby for accelerated gender parity, and fundraise for female-focused activity. There is a theme. The theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. Choose to Challenge. A challenged world is an alert world. And from challenge comes change. So, that falls right in because you need to be challenged. If, we let racism, gender inequality go unchallenged, then it continues. People feel it's okay. They don't mind. They don't mind. It's okay. But when you challenge it, and I'm an up in your face person. Again, people who know me know it. I'm a little guy, but my mouth is bigger than my body. So I'll challenge a person. I'll get in your face, and you can't mistreat me without some challenge. So I believe in challenge. The history of Women's History Day goes back to not Women's History Day. I'm sorry, International Women's Day goes back to around the early 1900s. And then women were struggling because the women's rights movement began in the 1800s. Again, before that, I'm sure, but organized women's activity began in the 1800s. But there was a lot of debate. Women were standing up for themselves. They were trying to gain equality, trying to gain the right to vote. So in 1909, part of the Socialist Party introduced the first National Women's Day. And it was actually done that time on February 28th. It has since been moved to March the 8th. That's the day that is celebrated worldwide, and today is March the 8th. And it gives another bunch of timelines and a lot of other information regarding it here. I won't bore you with that, but it is an important thing that we celebrate and focus in on women. Now, there are colors, they've gotten this down. There are colors that symbolize International Women's Day. The colors are purple, green, and white. Purple signifies justice and dignity. Green symbolizes hope. White, okay, I'm going to say it because they wrote it. White represents purity. Okay. Whew. White represents purity, albeit, they say it here, albeit a controversial concept. The colors originated from the Women's Social and Political Union in the United Kingdom in 1908. And it gives more information about who can celebrate, call to action, philanthropy, uplifting women, collaboration, female-focused charities. So you can go right online. That's what I did. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. Well, I know most things. I know everything, but I go online and I got some more information. I know everything. I'm a black Donald. No, I don't even want to say that. I'm smart. Donald Trump. I'm sorry I even brought that subject up. Getting back to the subject. Women's History Month, and today is International Women's Day. Now I am happy to let you know, and I'm not promoting my book. I'm not promoting my book. Again, as I said, I'm happy I wrote the book. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction. But it's because I like information. I love spreading information because I do take in a lot of information. So I could either be the smartest individual that you know, or I could be an intelligent individual who happens to be smart, but who disseminates information that he has found out. That's why I wrote columns. I wrote columns since I was in high school. I wrote my first column for the Central High School newspaper, The Tangent. So, I've written columns almost all my life, and that's because I have a great respect for words, and, that information that I put it out so hopefully others can use it. So, in my book, Now You Tell Me, history / facts, because these are facts. These are not just conjectures. History slash facts not taught in most schools. And I say most because there are schools out there that are progressive enough to know and to teach these things. So I don't want to disparage those schools. But in my book, uh, chapter 25, Women's History. That's why I have this big paper clip on there, this clip on there, because I wanted to be sure to come to the right page. Women's History. And in it, I detail the struggle women have had. And it gives a timeline of when women's struggles began. And it was called Women's Suffrage Struggle. And it began actually before the Civil War. During the 1820s and 1830s, as white men were gaining more and more freedom and power in America, their women, white men's women, were relegated to being part of their property. A woman's role was to simply serve her man's needs, take care of the home, children, and be a dutiful wife to her children. Many accepted this role graciously. Other women wanted more. And then I include a timeline that begins in 1848 and it goes all the way through the 1900s, and it talks about some of the struggles and some of the activism that took place in the name of women's rights. Now, during the time of women's rights, there was a little, not really controversy, but as I said, people of color, particularly black people, were struggling for their rights because they were similar to women. They were people's property. They were actually people's property. Actually, women were considered property. There was no real, paperwork on that like the way it is for black folks. They go out and bid on you and sell you. You couldn't sell and buy a wife. That was still illegal, at least not above board. You couldn't do it. But black people, so the struggle between women's rights and blacks, the rights of blacks and other people of color. I don't use that word minority to describe myself or others because I've talked about that. Nothing minor about Harry Paden. So I'm not a minority. I am a person of color, and other people of color, black people, and women's rights. There was sometimes a little disengagement because it was hard for a black woman to fight for her rights as a woman when she wasn't respected as a black woman. Okay, give my rights as a woman, that still doesn't give me my respect as a person of color. So sometimes there was a little, in their fight, it was hard for them at times to get black women to buy into their movement because they were busy trying to fight for rights for themselves and their husband and their children and, their race. So I discuss all that. Names like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucy Stone. Those are some women that are part of that movement. And again, I detail some of it. Alice Paul, Lucy Burns. And so it goes back and it discusses it in depth. So if you want additional information, certainly, and support me, you get this book because I cover women's rights, women's history, and I talk about it. And we know last year in November, the Honorable Kamala D. Harris, along with Joe Biden, were elected. And with that election, Ms. Harris became the first woman to hold the office of Vice President, the second highest office in this land. Higher than Nancy Pelosi, higher than the congresswomen, the gracious, honorable congresswomen that we have out there. So that was a very magnanimous thing to happen, historic. Certainly, for our young uh, women of color, white women. You know, it's just a great thing that women have elevated. But also, what's covered in my book is that even today, most women, the majority of the women, only make 77 cents for every dollar that a man makes. So it's a 33-cent disparity. So if a woman and let's be honest, if a woman and a Caucasian man went in for the same interview, this being the Caucasian man, he would go in, and if he got the job, he would be offered 33 more cent on a dollar for that job. If a woman came in, this is the woman, and she got the same job, they would offer her 33 cents less per dollar than the man. And that still goes on today. The disparity is real. So we have to, as men, particularly as a man who knows that, you know, I myself and my people have suffered because of discrimination, we have to do all that we can. I have daughters, and then, thank God they're all doing, they're successful. They've broken their glass ceiling, and they're raising daughters and sons, but they're raising daughters, my granddaughters, who are breaking glass ceilings. And we have to continue to support them, because disparity is just disparity. I don't care who it is, whether you are Indian, I'm not talking about Native American, a person from India, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, any other islands, any person of color. That's what we mean by person of color. Any non-white person. No disrespect to white people, because not all white people are evil and bad the way some are. So let me get that clear. Some of my best mentors have been people who happen to be white. So never will it come up my mouth that all white people have this affliction of racism. And as I speak, last evening, I still call her the Duchess of Sussex, Megan, was on Oprah, and she talked about some alarming things. But again, I'm not surprised by it, because I've traveled the world. There's racism in Russia. When I went to Russia, because I was black and I traveled with some white students, they pulled me to the side and said, why are you in America? America treats you. And that was in the 60s. No, it was 1970. Yeah, 1970, I'm sorry. Look how America treats your people. It's disgraceful. In Russia, we're socialists and everybody's treated the same. I didn't have an answer for them. I just didn't, because I knew America did mistreat our black people, particularly back in the 1970s. You know, they had just killed Dr. King. They were, you know, a lot of things going on. But I met some African students who were going to the colleges and universities in Russia, and they explained to me that there is racism. They say when they go to get a taxi, I have to stand up. They said they actually have to flip their collar and put it over their ears and cover it. And when the taxi stops, they turn around. So, because if they saw them as a black person, the taxi wouldn't stop. So I found out, I had an answer for them then, that there is racism in Russia. There's racism in China. I traveled to China. There's racism I've traveled throughout the world. Some of the best unracial countries were the Scandinavian countries, like Sweden, Denmark. I literally tell you, those people treated me like I was a son. We lived in their house. They gave us cloths to wash up in. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, those people there were, I would go to a Scandinavian country based on how I was treated. Now, I'm sure there are people there who have their afflictions of racism. But having said all that, we have to help our women, girls, and today go out and do something nice for a woman on International Women's Day. Throughout the rest of the month, let's appreciate and celebrate Women's History Month. Like James Brown said, it's a man's world, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl. That stands pound, But his point is exactly that it's a man's world. It is. Benefits are for men, mostly white men particularly. That's the way it's been, and that's why it's always a fight for equality. But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl. I'm going to show you, oh, I forgot when I did that, purple. The colors are purple, white. I don't really wear white that much, but I got on like whitish pants. And oh goodness, my shoes are green. You might not can't tell, but these are green. So the white for the purity, purple for the majestic, and green, I forget exactly what they say green was, but green is money, so green is always a welcome color. So for Women's Day, International Women's Day, I certainly wanted to do this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. There is another saying, the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. And that's a tribute to our women. Thank you. Have a great International Women's Day. Women, you truly need to be appreciated. Without you, our world would be different. And thank you, world, but thank you, America, for electing Kamala Harris. I know she'll make a difference, and hopefully the glass ceiling will be broken sometime in the future for a woman to become president. Many countries across the world have women as their primary leader, presidents, and a few queens, and but women can rule anything. Women can do anything. To God be the glory. Thank you again. Happy International Women's Day and happy Women's History Month. To God be the glory.